Taking a great photo can be really challenging, if not nearly impossible, and here's why. In order to take a great photo, well, the photo conditions really need to be dialed in. That's things like the gear you shoot with, the light, the subject proximity, the environment, and that's just to name a few. And by the way, these are things that simply create the opportunity to take a great photo. Hopefully you don't screw it up along the way like I did with the wrong settings, missed focus, or some other human blunder. It's so easy to screw up a great photo. But macro is really special. You see, with the right macro gear and settings, it's like you have a cheat code for photography, because it allows you to stack the deck in your favor in order to create a near perfect photo condition again and again and again. Which means you can take more photos with those near perfect conditions than you would if you were shooting any other style of photography, and this is a great example. Now, it took me about 2 years to capture that photo of an eagle. And I gotta tell you, it was hard and took time and costed money. And yet I shot these photos within 2 weeks of getting into macro photography, and you can too. So my goal with this particular video is to walk you through the camera setup that I use that allows me to control more of the conditions. More photos taken with better conditions means more better photos. First off, let's talk about optics. Now, this is a fantastic macro lens. It's the Sony G lens. It's a 90mm. It is incredibly sharp and it has all the features, making it an incredible value, but at the high end of the scale. However, my question for you is, these photos you're seeing right now, a lot of them were taken with this lens, and one of them was taken with a 35mm lens, just like this lens here. Can you tell which photo was taken with a lens I already have? Because I think the very best way to get into macro is to simply buy some accessories. For example, extension tubes right here. These cost about $30 or $40, and the image on the screen right now was taken with a 35mm lens and 2 very inexpensive extension tubes. That means macro photography is so accessible and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars. Unlike something like wildlife, where you're going to want to have a pretty expensive zoom lens. Bummer. Now, another option you can go with is this Raynox 250. It's a macro conversion lens, meaning you can take a lens you already have, add this, and you'll be good to go. However, the thing about this is that it adds more glass, and it is going to slightly degrade the image quality. It's going to create more vignetting, softening around the edges. Extension tubes really don't do that because there's no glass. It's true. Now, one of the issues we have when we shoot macro is depth of field. And all that means is how much of the photo is actually in focus. And when you're really close to a subject with the end of your lens, well, the amount in focus is thin to none. And if you look here on this wasp, you notice most of the photo is not in focus except the eyes. Always try to get the eyes in focus if you're shooting insects or birds or people. However, by increasing the f-stop to around f7 to f11, we'll get just a little bit more of our subject in focus, making it easier to get a sharp, clean photo. But unfortunately, at the cost of light. That's one of the things about photography. You're always trading one thing to gain another. So sure, we can get more of a focus plane, more of that insect in focus, but at the cost of light. Thus, by spending just a little bit more money, like buying this Mamiya Speedlight MK320, it'll cost you about $60, $70. You instantly address the issues with reduced light, and you're shooting at a higher f-stop, so the focus plane is a little bit more manageable, but it's challenging. Because again, really the goal is to create conditions that are optimal for great photos, A flash will help you do just that. Here's another tip when you're shooting insects or really anything outdoors. If you shoot in shade or if you shade your subject, which is really pretty easy when your subject is very small, well then you're going to have a more pleasing image because typically during midday the sun really creates a harsh light and you don't want that for your photos. Next up, let's talk about freezing the action. This is important if you're going to shoot insects. For example, a ladybug, I would use a shutter speed of around 1,000. If I was shooting a bumblebee or a honeybee, I would shoot upwards of 4,000 when it comes to the shutter speed. However, if you do indeed use a flash, you can have a much lower shutter speed because the flash will actually help to freeze the action. For example, check out the settings on this particular image. The ISO is set at 100. Perfect. Low ISO means less noise and a sharper photo. I'm shooting at f11, perfect on the f-stop, and the shutter speed is only 1/125, which is very low. Now, if you shoot 1/125 and you don't have a flash, you're going to have a lot of blur. But again, the flash helps to freeze the action. That's great. And furthermore, a lower shutter speed lets you capture more light for better, cleaner, sharper photos. Now, there are some times when it actually does make more sense to use a higher f-stop. And the video on the screen right now covers exactly when that is. Click on that video, I'll see you there. You dig?